To tell you the truth, knowing full well that the footage that I showed you in my intro, mainly this bit alone, was in low quality, mainly the fact that I can't find high quality, is more of an indication that Nickelodeon isn't even trying on making this show somewhat memorable, especially since that the only way we're ever going to find higher quality of this episode is on Paramount Plus, which I do not have. But at the same time, it's difficult for me to get into the show since this is the third episode I've watched from its pony. But since it's Halloween, and I really wanted Halloween Mania to be special by reviewing shows that I'm most likely going to have a hard time getting into, let's go talk about the Halloween episode of It's Pony. Waiters of the Lost Cinema, which is a creative episode title by the way, centers around Annie and her friends trying to find the legendary abandoned movie theater in the sewers that has a lot of untouched candy, but what's holding them back is Pony's fear of scary things. So Annie decides to have Pony wear a mask or a helmet in order to not see any of the scary things, but this only leads to Kyle, along with his friends, tag along since that they also want the candy in the abandoned movie theater. Not much to say about the plot, considering that it mainly focuses on the characters to get to point A to point B in a location that is located underground, which they ditch trick-or-treating at first, even if they mostly regret it, only to realize that the candy inside the movie theater is expired. But to tell you the truth, knowing full well that this is an inspiration from Indiana Jones, The Raiders of the Lost Ark, which the title is really making a parody out of, I really felt like that they really wanted this to be a lot more special, considering that doing a typical Halloween episode involving trick-or-treating still has potential, but at the same time, having this twist of having the characters go search for the haunted, well, not really haunted, but the abandoned movie theater that is underground is actually something that really makes a Halloween episode unique on its own. Carl Gunderson, who is the creator of the movie theater that ended up being abandoned underground, his story involving the love of his life and dealing with the fact that he misses the movie theater so much that he really wants to spend time in the movie theater is an indication that the secrets involving the location of the movie theater underground really makes this a lot more interesting when you take into consideration, other than the fact that people still watch Halloween movies during the Halloween season, is the fact that the candy there is exclusive. Mainly the fact that other places only have their own exclusive candies, while other places don't have that exclusive candy. Granted, it's obvious that the candy itself is far too old to the point that even if you eat the candy after the expiration date for about a day or two, it would still be better than how it tasted during the present timeline of this episode. But considering that Kyle and his friends have been stealing Annie and her friends' candy for so many times during Halloween, Annie's justification on going to the Lost Cinema is really justified. Besides, it really feels like that if you have an alternative on picking a different place on trying to find candy, even if it has nothing to do with trick-or-treating, you would probably do the same thing regardless of what Annie is doing, knowing full well that bullies will always steal your candy no matter what, because I know that type of stuff happens in real life in some places in the world. Granted, not everywhere, unless if you're with a parent when you were Annie's age, but still. To tell you the truth, the entire episode centering around Annie and the friends just trying to find clues about the Lost Cinema itself really shows that I really appreciate of how this episode is doing a lot more different than just being a trick-or-treating style of episode. Mainly the fact that with the characters going into the sewers, which is a weird place to do an episode centering around Halloween, but considering that the theater isn't underground, it really makes sense. But since Pony has a habit where he's scared of everything around him during the Halloween season, believe me when I say this, I've seen this type of trope happen with other characters, But considering that Pony really is afraid of anything when it comes to Halloween related, since that he mostly goes trick-or-treating with Annie's friends during the Halloween season, it kind of shows that he just isn't accustomed to anything of what is going on when it comes to the joint itself. Because I know full well that he would never go to a haunted house or anything that is scary during the Halloween season. Because trick-or-treating, even if there are people who are going to prank you or scare you, it's not usually all the time, since that mostly trick-or-treaters just go to house with nothing scary happening to them, which it never happened to me when I was trick-or-treating. But considering that Pony has a phobia, even if he's an animal or not, he has no control of. And when people have phobias, it's difficult to take control of those phobias 100%. And believe me when I say this, there was no way for Pony to control his phobia of being afraid of things during the Halloween season. Considering that with this show only having 2 seasons, and this is one of the final episodes of this show possibly, it's really difficult to feel sympathy towards a character or just go against that character who is a scaredy cat. Well, we don't get to see them again due to the less interest of Nick has with this show. Before we get into the ending of this episode, there's a Halloween party during their journey, which leads to Brian having a dance-off against these 2 characters. And you want to know what those 2 characters were? Annie's parents. To tell you the truth, knowing full well that they told themselves that they're going to improve on their dancing next year, mainly the fact that they spend no time during the Halloween season in the Halloween party underground. It's accurate considering that these parents need to have the holiday during the Halloween season. When they found the candy, they encountered Kyle and the others who steal the candy from them. But then they get a visitor that was right behind Annie who was about to make a stand for herself, thinking that she stands up to the bullies, but unfortunately it wasn't the case. But as it turns out, the person who scared Kyle and the others is Carol Gunnarsson, who made the theater from the ground up. And since that he really likes his creation, he always spends his time going underground to his own movie theater, to the point that the candy itself, despite being old, is something that he mostly wants to keep, since that it's really important to him. But if you remember the retirement home scene where Annie is just trying to find some answers about the theater itself, one of the elders, Phyllis, is actually Carol's love interest. And to tell you the truth, knowing full well that the ending showcases of Annie reuniting the 2, well, not really reunited, but having the 2 come together while getting the candy, is honestly a good reward and also a good thing for Annie to do in order to make things right for Carol and the love of his life. Even though that the candy they got is far old, this ending really makes it worthwhile, knowing full well that Carol would still not allow anyone to steal his candy from his theater, even though that the theater itself hasn't been used since that it's been abandoned. But at the same time, I really appreciate the ending, which really makes this episode better in my point of view of how they handle an episode that centers around finding a theater, which is an original concept, than doing a typical trick-or-treating episode. But to be real, if Annie wants real revenge on Kyle and his friends, she would have given them the theater candy, and even if they didn't mind the taste, it doesn't change the fact that they will be extremely sick when November arrives. And believe me, it would have been sweet revenge, considering that they really deserve it for stealing Annie and her friends' candy throughout the many Halloweens. It may be out of character, but still. I really enjoyed this episode for how it's trying to be a different Halloween episode rather than the same trope involving Halloween episodes of trick-or-treating and haunted houses related stuff even if I do enjoy those, but it really makes this episode a lot more unique on its own, which is really a shame of how Nickelodeon just mistreated the show. When it comes to me getting back to the show, it's mainly a Valentine's Day episode, if there is one, or a love episode for Valentine's Half Month 6, if I'm going to do that again in February. But other than that, I'm still having a difficult time on watching this show when I get the chance, but believe me when I say this, it's difficult to get into cartoons that have been cancelled without a conclusion. Or if this show will ever have a conclusion, considering of how the Loud House took a turn for the worse. I'm giving this episode a 7.75 out of 10.